Antigravity CLI is worth using only if the receipts beat the chat. That is the whole answer. My thesis is simple. Antigravity CLI is only worth adopting if it produces faster, auditable coding loops than Cline-style, chat-heavy workflows. If I cannot see the command output, the prompt, and the final diff in a real repo, I do not care how polished the demo looks. So this is not a vibes tour. I installed it, ran one task in a repository, checked the changed files, and compared that output against a Cline run on the same task. Theo-style teardowns are useful for tool awareness. I want stricter proof, command logs, diffs, and a commit I can inspect. First, what is Antigravity CLI used for? In practice, it is a coding assistant that tries to move from chat into command-driven repo work. Inspect files, propose edits, and complete a task with a reviewable artifact at the end. That matters because the search intent behind Antigravity CLI, Antigravity AI CLI, Antigravity CLI command, and Antigravity CLI code is not philosophical. It is, can I install this thing, run it against code, and trust what it changed? For install and first run, I would follow the official Antigravity CLI documentation exactly, not a random copied snippet from social media. On screen is the terminal receipt, the install step, and the version check with the exact command output. If your output does not match the docs, stop there. I would not adopt Antigravity CLI from a polished demo without checking command output, auth flow, and generated diffs in a real repo. I would reject that in code review because nobody can audit where the tool actually touched the codebase. The next question is the command surface. How do you install and run Antigravity CLI? Usually, the first useful answer is whatever the help command exposes: init, run, auth, config, or equivalent in your build. I am not going to invent flags I have not verified on the current release. What matters is that the CLI should make the workflow inspectable. If the only usable interface is a chat pane with hidden state, the audit story is already worse. My test was intentionally boring, a contained repo task with clear success criteria, not a synthetic benchmark. That is where Antigravity CLI code becomes meaningful. I gave it a prompt that required reading existing files, making a small implementation change, and leaving the repo in a reviewable state. Indie Dev Dan talks about the big three: context, prompt, model. This test is mostly about context discipline and output quality. Here is the important receipt. On screen is the agent or command log capturing the prompt, the tool call, and the final diff. This answers, where do you verify what Antigravity CLI actually changed? Not in marketing copy, in the log, and in Git. If the tool cannot show me what it read, what action it took, and what patch resulted, then it is not ready for a working developer workflow. And here is the repo-level receipt, a real commit hash showing the files changed by Antigravity CLI during that task. This is the minimum bar. A clean commit gives me something I can diff, revert, split, or annotate. That is the difference between a coding tool and a chat toy. Anthropic's docs are fine for API behavior. Production workflow starts when a change lands as a commit with evidence. Now the uncomfortable part, where this breaks. The failure mode I care about is not the model made a typo. It is broader drift, touching too many files, rewriting style without being asked, or making a change that passes surface review but hides poor reasoning. I have seen tools look fast right up to the moment the diff gets noisy. If Antigravity CLI starts editing unrelated files, I stop the run. I would not merge a wide, unscoped agent diff just because the terminal says success. So, Antigravity versus Cline. Is Antigravity CLI better than Cline for coding workflows? My ranked opinion is this. For auditable repo work, I prefer Antigravity CLI over Cline, only when Antigravity keeps commands and diffs inspectable end-to-end. Cline is better known, but it is often too chat-forward for audits. On the same task, the side-by-side diff tells the story. If Antigravity produces a smaller, cleaner patch with fewer conversational detours, it wins. If it needs comparable babysitting, then Cline's maturity may be the safer default. My broader tool take is not mysterious. Gemini CLI is useful when auth plugins work without ceremony. Open code is promising, but plugin setup has to earn its keep. Antigravity CLI is interesting if commands and diffs stay inspectable. That is the ranking that matters to me. Auditability first, then setup friction, then model flexibility. I do not optimize for feels smart if the output path is opaque. That brings us to Antigravity plus Gemini CLI OAuth plugin. Does Antigravity CLI support Gemini CLI auth plugins? If your build exposes that integration in config or auth docs, the practical question is not theoretical support. It is whether the plugin works without ceremony and whether the auth state is obvious when the run starts. Good auth is boring. Broken auth burns half your session before the first code edit. So yes, support only matters if the plugin path is visible, testable, and not fragile across machines. This is another failure mode worth naming. If the auth plugin is flaky, or if the CLI silently falls back to a different provider, your receipts become unreliable. I have zero patience for that. A coding CLI should tell me who authenticated, what backend is active, and why a run failed. Hidden auth state is how teams end up arguing with screenshots instead of shipping code. So the practical verdict: use Antigravity CLI if you want a command-first coding loop with visible logs, reproducible diffs, and commit-level accountability. Skip it if all you have is a glossy demo and no clean audit trail. For Antigravity CLI documentation, read the official docs for installation and auth. For Antigravity CLI command, start with help output and config paths. For Antigravity versus C-line, compare the final diff, not the charisma of the interface. Recap: Antigravity CLI is only worth it when it is faster than chat-heavy workflows and easier to audit. I tested the install path, the real repo run, the command log, and the side-by-side diff against Cline. That is the standard I'd use before adopting it on a team. Receipts in the description. If you want more teardown-style workflow tests with actual diffs instead of tool worship, that is what this channel is for.